We're talking brand loyalty and sneakers, this time on Fire Footwear. Welcome to Fire Footwear, everybody. As always, I'm your host, Matt Freites. I want to welcome you back if you have been here before, and I want to say a big welcome to everybody who is new. This week, I'm going to talk about brand loyalty in sneakers, and I'm going to do so by talking about 3 different examples of why brand loyalty and brand responsibility actually matters. We're going to start with an incident that happened recently with the Jordan 5 Black Metallic release. We saw there were multiple instances of violence breaking out at these sneaker releases. This isn't a foreign concept in sneakers, really. This has certainly happened before. But in today's world, I kind of ask myself this question of, should we be seeing it the way that we do still? And I think there are multiple factors behind that. First things first, when it comes to these sneaker releases, especially a coveted retro like the Black Metallic Jordan 5s, I think that there is a heightened sense of want for a shoe like this. The other thing that goes into that is I think Nike and Jordan Brand have done a lot of work this year to make sure that we are hyped for these releases. And they have done so by having great marketing campaigns and also done so by making sure to tell us that these shoes are very, very limited.
Come and get it! Come and get it!
Now, in the case of the Black Metallic Jordan 5, I don't know if they've been explicit in how limited they are, but we both know from the Jordan 1 85 breads, those are extremely limited, and I did a video on that a couple of weeks ago. But with these releases, I think there's an element that these companies like Nike and Jordan Brand are just not taking into account. And I think they have to take it into account, and that's resale. Coupled with that is the fact of where these releases take place. Why does resale matter? Well, resale to me matters because there is an inherent difference in what these sneaker releases mean compared to what they meant well before resale was a thing. Resale has always been a part of the culture, but in the last decade or so, it has sort of taken on this high profitability outlook. People see it because they lived it for a while. There are a lot of profit margins to be had when it comes to reselling sneakers, especially sneakers that they see as limited and rare. And so when you couple that with certain areas in the country, certain places where these releases could take place, where there are people who may see that kind of an opportunity to make a profit, it might mean more to them. And that, coupled with all of this hype, can sometimes lead down the road of violence like we saw. I'm never going to condone violence at a sneaker release, but certainly depending on your life situation, you may see a limited release like the Black Metallic Jordan 5s and see that as a way to maybe get out of a situation that you're in. And certainly we're not going to ever see this stop. But the question in this case is, how responsible is the brand? In this particular case, Nike and Jordan Brand are distanced from this kind of situation. Reason being is they are, of course, huge conglomerates. Nike and Jordan Brand are massive brands in this world, maybe even some of the most recognizable brands in this world. And the thing about it is they are very distanced from what I like to call the boots on the ground. In the end, these stories don't really resonate with a lot of these CEOs and corporate folks because they're not really connected to them, because this story is so distanced from the work that they do. And that's where I think a brand like Nike and Jordan Brand really need to think a little bit harder when they push so hard in terms of hype and they push so hard in terms of limited releases, because I think there are unintended consequences that they're not thinking about.
I've made a huge mistake.
In the end, it certainly isn't Nike and Jordan Brand's sole responsibility to make sure that these things don't happen, but I do think that they need to think about it a little bit harder. Switching gears to a brand that I think has a very benign reputation, and that's New Balance, let's talk about Joe Freshgoods. Joe Freshgoods has obviously had a great last 5 years in the culture, certainly had a lot of hits in terms of his New Balance collaborations. He has one coming out later this year. But earlier this year, New Balance did run into a similar situation as the Black Metallic 5s with the Lorenz OG 860 release. This was a release that you had to get a golden ticket to find. And if you've ever seen the original Willy Wonka, you know what kind of hype and hysteria comes with a situation like that. This isn't necessarily a situation that New Balance is overtly trying to get away from, but when I see the work that Joe Freshgoods is doing right now as it relates to this upcoming release, he's doing something that I think is very important. He's going out into the culture and trying to get some goodwill. He's trying to connect with the boots on the ground. A supporter of the show got to meet him recently here in Washington, D.C. And one of the things I think is great about this is he's trying to give back to the culture. He's trying to reconnect with the people that are making him as popular as he is. Those of us who live this culture like to be recognized from time to time. And I think that by doing this, while maybe not a direct response to what happened with the 860 release, I do think that it goes a long way in building goodwill and continuing New Balance down this road of being a brand that people see as positive. And that's what I mean when it comes to brand responsibility and brand loyalty. People see positivity, they're going to gravitate toward that brand, especially if you're getting the goods that they are giving you. And now if we talk about one of the worst things that could possibly happen with a brand, let's talk about Kanye West and Yeezy. It's undeniable that Kanye West and Yeezy are probably on the Mount Rushmore of most popular sneaker brands of all time. It's undeniable, in my opinion. He's done so much work, especially with Adidas. So much of that work was groundbreaking. But the last 5 years for Kanye has been, to put it lightly, a roller coaster.
Oh, God.
There's been a lot of things happening in the public eye. But one thing I do know is that the most recent situation with Kanye where Shopify took down his shop because he was selling shirts with swastikas on them. This is not to be a political statement in any way, but I think that the swastika as a symbol is something that almost everybody can agree symbolizes evil and symbolizes hate. In today's world, maybe that isn't so for a lot of people, but I think to put that symbol on a t-shirt and try to make profit off of it is very tone deaf, and that's putting it lightly.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
And so as a brand now, Kanye West has no value because so many people are looking at this brand and thinking, I don't want to be associated with that. And along with that comes the complication of a lot of people who have supported him so much over the last decade or more, where they have huge collections of Yeezys and have put them all over social media. It's a conflict of interest for a lot of people, and I'm not here to solve that problem for sure, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether you should or shouldn't wear a brand based off of what happens with the individual that is behind it. For me personally, if I wear a Yeezy, most people aren't going to know what it is. But I can understand people seeing me wearing a Yeezy, knowing what it is, and now knowing what he seems to represent today, and thinking, this is what I represent. But I use this as an example not to say what you should or shouldn't do with your Yeezys. I use it as an example of this is where brand responsibility goes off the rails. Kanye West is a brand. He has always been the brand. Yes, Yeezy is a name, but he is the image behind Yeezy. And what he does is a direct reflection on the products that he puts out, especially now that he is so distanced from that peak period with Adidas. But Kanye, I think, is in a position, I don't know if he's actually going to course correct. This seems to be what he wants to do, and he has every right to do it. But as a brand, we, the consumer, have a right to say, that brand is not for me. And so those are 3 examples of differences that have happened between brands lately and how they have handled it. It doesn't necessarily mean every one of them is right or wrong. These are just examples that I've seen, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the responsibility that I think brands might have to kind of look into what is going on with the products that they're selling and try to be at the forefront of how they can spread more positivity for their brand. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.